Delegates, our core belief is independence for our country, not as an aspiration for the future, but something to be delivered with urgency, not for the hereafter, but for the here and now. There have been 5 national elections in Scotland since the first referendum in 2014. In each of them, the parties of independence have won a majority of seats. In this year's Scottish election, it was both a majority of seats and, thanks to Alba's small contribution, a majority of votes as well. And yet, despite that clearly expressed mandate from the people to at least urgently reopen the decision on independence, no progress has been made. Now, of course, there's always a reason. We had to wait until Brexit. But 2 general elections were held during the Brexit process. In any case, Brexit was not a reason for delaying independence, it was a reason for accelerating independence. And then there's the pandemic. Why should the pandemic be a reason for delaying, at the very least, the preparations for a referendum? The pandemic didn't stop the actual Scottish elections this year, nor should it have. Why then did it delay independence preparations? My favourite Bill Murray film is Groundhog Day. It's the theme of somebody caught in a time loop. And that, of course, that theme, the time loop theme, has been dealt with many times in film. It's usually a comedy. But for Scotland and independence, it's becoming a tragedy. To illustrate this clearly, well, let's take the headlines over the last few years from one national newspaper selected purely at random. Now, let's have a quick look at some of the highlights. 1st of August 2015, you can't stop another referendum if the Scots want one, Nicola Sturgeon. The 13th of March 2017, here we go, from a Nicola Sturgeon press conference. The 9th of June 2018, get ready for Indy Ref 2, from Keith Brown. The 29th of April 2019, Indy Ref 2 most likely before the end of 2020, Nicola Sturgeon. 30th of January 2020, if this Parliament votes for a referendum, it will have it, Mike Russell. The 15th of November 2020, independence referendum is to happen next year, Ian Blackford. Well, that is good news. Now, these are not the remarks of some overwrought, overheated backbencher. These are the remarks of the First Minister, her Deputy, the SNP President and the leader of the Westminster Group. Is it any wonder that Westminster Tory politicians seem pretty relaxed about any political challenge for Scotland? The Grand Old Duke of York, he had 10,000 men. He marched them up to the top of the hill and he marched them down again. The next line of that song is Rule Britannia. And that's exactly what will happen if we constantly march people up to the top of the hill and march them down again. Bill Murray, he was only trapped in his time loop for a few months. Scotland's referendum Groundhog Day has lasted 6 years. And now in the run-up to the SNP virtual conference, we have the announcement this week that a reduced civil service team are going to be asked to start preparations for an independence white paper. Wow, had me back. It is. It is perfectly reasonable for the SNP to conduct a virtual conference, but not to conduct a virtual independence campaign. The real task, the task which this party is applying itself to, are these. Firstly, to formulate a strategy for bending Westminster to the will of the Scottish people. That was exactly what Kenny MacAskill laid out in the first debate of our first conference. After 2011, we faced down David Cameron and George Osborne. Are we really saying that Scotland can't face down Boris Johnson and the disco king himself, Michael Gove? But it won't happen by itself. If we start that campaign for Scotland's claim of right, if we started it now, today, a referendum would still be some day off. But one thing's for sure, if you never really start the next independent campaign, then you shall never, ever finish the independence campaign. Our second task as a party is to refurbish the independence platform for the post-Brexit age. On Europe, on currency, on borders. Indeed, Alapa candidates did more work in that in the 5 weeks of the election campaign than the party of government have done in 5 years. We didn't get much opportunity to promote that work during the election. Now we have, and this conference has been a great start.